Good evening, Mr. Bond fans, and welcome once again to a video that is something of a coda to a recent series in which I have been watching through, reacting to, discussing all of the released James Bond deleted scenes so far. These are all on either the Ultimate Edition DVDs or the Blu-ray discs, and they're viewable for everyone who has those discs. However, there are some deleted scenes that have not yet been released on any kind of James Bond home media, and these are scenes that we know exist. We have clips from some of them, we have images from some of them, we have seen scripts where some of this stuff is discussed, and the fact that it hasn't been released yet is so frustrating in some cases. I'm going to be talking through 7 films in the series that have deleted material that we have actually seen quite a bit of or know quite a bit about that may well exist in some, dusty vault somewhere or on some hard drive at the Eon offices. I'm not going to be going through, oftentimes in Bond teaser material and the trailers and stuff, you'll see like a little snippet or two here and there of shots that weren't used, alternate takes, that kind of stuff, and if you want a really good rundown of all of these things in the minute detail, then I highly recommend going to commander007.net. They have this really cool, almost database of all the different deleted shots and alternate shots and all that kind of stuff, so I really recommend going to that page to find out more information on that level. I'm going to be talking about some of the deleted scenes that we may well actually get to see someday if they do still exist. We've seen parts of these scenes in trailers and the like, and I think some of the stuff in here is really interesting. So with all that being said, let's begin with Goldfinger. The first deleted bit of material that springs to mind for Goldfinger is actually a bit of material that we can see in the finished film. In the title sequence, when various clips from the film and from the previous film are being projected onto the body of a beautiful gold woman, there is a clip of Bond in Q Branch walking past a Royal Mail van. It looks as if the van pops open and Bond does a kind of double take. We don't see what actually comes out of the van. I've read reports and the like that there was some kind of big Gatling gun that was actually in the Royal Mail van, which would have been pretty cool, but this would presumably have been at the very start of Bond walking into Q Branch, so it'd be an extra kind of Q Branch gadget gag, and I'm surprised that we haven't actually seen the amount of times this series kind of reuses elements or elements from previous films that didn't quite work out, they bring back in the latest film. The Q Branch scenes are always an absolute highlight of the films, and so any extra little bit of material from one of those scenes I would really appreciate. Next up for Goldfinger, something I would really like to see would be something of an extended fight sequence on the plane towards the end of the film. We can see in some of these shots behind Goldfinger and then on the floor subdued after Goldfinger gets sucked out, there is a henchman with Goldfinger, and I guess this makes sense because Goldfinger would have had to have overpowered the people actually working on the plane to get control of it, and I can't imagine him doing that by himself, so the fact that he has a henchman here with him makes an awful lot of sense. However, despite this guy appearing in shots, there's never any kind of tussle with Bond or anything like that, and I'm assuming that that material was deleted, probably so that the showdown felt a bit more personal. It's just Bond and Goldfinger, but the guy is so blatantly there in so many of the shots that I would be kind of fascinated to see what an extended version of this fight sequence would look like. I'm guessing that the guy probably got knocked out really quickly, but still, it would be quite fascinating to see that stuff. Up next is the man with the toes. Now pay attention, 007 fans, I only have a few seconds to tell you about the up to 40% off Black Friday sale on the Ekster website. Ekster, of course, being the world's largest smart wallet brand and makers of these fine bits of kit. These things are fully loaded with features, and the whole design ethos of these is to make slim, stylish, unobtrusive wallets that can just basically make your life easier. These were sold to me originally as, if James Bond had a wallet, we think he'd have one of these, and it's very hard to argue with that. The latest release from Ekster is the space-grade aluminium, or aluminum for our American friends, card holder. This thing is super sturdy and fits in my pocket real nice. It can hold around 15 cards, with 5 easily stored in the main compartment, and there's an expandable back plate for more on the back of the wallet. You can also use this strap to store receipts and stuff. It's designed to block wireless theft, which can be very reassuring to those of us who live in big cities, but the main feature that I'm still most in love with is the signature card mechanism, which makes fumbling through your wallet for the right card a thing of the past, and it still works perfectly on the Vachetta wallet that I've been using regularly for about 6 months now. So particularly with Christmas coming up, if you're looking for a special gift for the gadget lover in your life, then do head over to the Ekster website using the link in the video description box below for more details on their products and discounts available. And if you will excuse me, now I'm going to try and figure out how I can get a laser beam installed in this particular model. Up next is The Man with the Golden Gun and the extended footage from Bond and Scaramanga's duel towards the very end of the film. Some of this footage can be seen in one of The Man with the Golden Gun's early trailers, and I think it's quite an interesting bit of footage because it essentially changes the Scaramanga character. From what we understand from the dialogue, Scaramanga seems to be cheating in this final duel.
Now I know how you do it, Scaramanga. The secret of success, Mr. Bond. Never take chances.
Which is a really interesting character point, because as it is in the final film, by all accounts, he does this completely fairly. Him and Bond are on an even pegging, basically. And to have Scaramanga cheat would kind of change that and make him more villainous in a strange way. I think Christopher Lee's performance as Scaramanga is really fantastic, and to the extent that when he does eventually get killed at the end of the film, you can't help but feel slightly sorry for the guy. Like, his face is just so pained, whereas if he cheated, I think maybe the audience would be rooting for his demise a bit more. Maybe it was just a complication too much for the duel at the end, it just was unnecessary, and it does kind of, we've not seen Scaramanga cheat or anything else throughout the rest of the film, so maybe this would feel a bit jarring. Like, throughout most of the film we have seen him as, yeah, no, he's an amazing shot, he's worth his, you know, $1 million a bullet, so seeing him cheat in this way would maybe detract a bit from that. Maybe it would feel out of character if he was suddenly to be behaving that way. However, seeing more of the duel at the end of the film would be really cool, and I would absolutely love it if that whole sequence resurfaced at some point. Obviously, The Man with the Golden Gun is quite an old film at this point, and as I said, there's a good chance that this footage does not even exist anymore, which would be a shame, but you know, I'm holding out hope. Up next is a deleted scene, well actually 2 deleted scenes from Die Another Day, one of which we actually have a good chunk of in the, funnily enough, is not listed under deleted scenes on the Blu-ray, it's like in a separate featurette, but this is when Bond's returning to London around about halfway during the film, and obviously Roger Moore's daughter is playing the air stewardess. She comes out with Bond's martini, and then there's a little bit extra of her in there as she notices that Bond is not in his seat, and the idea would be that as they're coming into London, Bond would be underneath the plane, holding on to the wheel as it kind of extends out, and then he'd hop off at Heathrow Airport to some bemused baggage handlers, no doubt. This would have been really nuts if this had been kept in the film. It's so ridiculously silly, and I guess they felt like they needed to show how Bond was going to get through passport control and immigration, all that kind of stuff, but it raises more questions than it solves for sure, so I'm glad it was cut from the film. At the same time, it sounds quite, even if obviously I guess that the green screen work wasn't completed and all that kind of stuff, it bothers me that we only have like half of this scene in existence, and I would like to see it as its whole thing, and also how it would cut in with the very next thing that we see, which is Gustav Graves parachuting into Buckingham Palace. The other scene from Die Another Day, which we don't have any footage from, but we do have plenty of stills, is kind of an alternate scene of Bond and Miranda making out, and this time they're doing it in some kind of like hot spring outside of Gustav's diamond mine. I would be curious to see what this looks like, because it just looks so damn silly. Like, you have this one shot of like Gustav Graves and Mr. Kill just like staring in at Pierce Brosnan and Rosamund Pike getting it on in the hot spring, and it just looks so ridiculous. I would absolutely love to see it. Up next, I'm going to talk about some scenes from the films that we have stills of, but by all accounts, the footage is well gone. First of all, I'm going to be talking about a scene from Russia with Love, which actually, no, you know what, over to director Terence Young to talk a bit more about this scene from the banned Criterion disc audio commentary.
There's a sequence in the film where, I can't remember, it's all so confused now and it's such a long time ago, but I know the man in the black beret, who is the Bulgarian killer, he goes into St. Sophia's, and Mr. What's-Name puts on his black gloves and kills him, or breaks his neck or strangles him. Now, we had a little scene before Sean arrives on the ferry boat to meet the girl who's going to give him the Lector machine. And the question is, how did he get away from all of them? In the end, we never bothered, but we cared a lot about it at that moment to make it more logical. How, when he's being followed, we've said in the picture, they follow us, we follow them, we're all very respectful about it. How did he get away? So Sean is in a taxi on his way to the ferry boat. He's followed by Mr. Blackberry and the Citroën, who is followed in turn by the big Rolls Royce, the British Embassy Rolls Royce. At a certain moment, Sean leans across, jams on the handbrake, the car stops, Mr. Citroën runs in the back of him, smashes his fender, smashes the front, and crash into him from behind comes the Rolls Royce, which starts to pull away, and out of the Rolls Royce steps Pedro Armendáriz with his cigar. And we did 11 takes because we want him to have his ash intact. So at last we got it, down, third one, and out steps Pedro Armendáriz looking very urbane in a pale grey suit, looking very smart. And the man turns on him and said, "This is unethical, this is against all protocol. We never do this amongst ourselves." He said, "You've smashed up my car." He says, "I can't move." And Pedro had the cigar, and he said, "My friend," top, top, spills the ash. This is James Bond, the same thing. He says, "My friend," tap, tap, the ash on the thing. He says, "That's life." And he gets back in the Rolls Royce. Sean gets in, and they drive off with this guy stranded. And we had that sequence in there, and that's the sequence I told you, my 10-year-old son. The picture's been shown to everybody. The critics have seen it. The United Artists people have seen it. The French distributors have seen it. They're dubbing it in French. Nobody realized, and I realize now we should have left it in. Nobody realizes that the guy's already dead. It's extraordinary what. If a picture's moving fast, I'm sure everybody would have noticed it on the way home.
Seeing deleted footage from Russia with Love would kind of be like on par as seeing deleted footage from Goldfinger, because those films are so kind of iconic in the Bond filmography. Just seeing anything extra of them is kind of like gold dust, and it sounds like a fun Kerim Bey moment as well. Obviously, the massive plot hole that it would create by using a character who was killed just a couple of scenes ago is kind of nuts. I mean, when you look at like the structure of the film, this scene, by what Terence Young says, would come immediately after the sequence in the Hagia Sophia where we see the Bulgarian man being killed, and then we cut to Bond and Kerim talking, and then we would have had this scene where the Bulgarian man is alive, and then we would have gone to Bond and Tatiana on the boat. So you really don't need that scene in there. I think it was probably just more of a nice character moment for Kerim Bey. I guess that, as Terence Young said, the filmmakers felt like they needed to explain why Bond wasn't going to be followed onto the boat, but you know what, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, but would love to see it if that footage does still exist somewhere. Next, I'm going to talk about one of my favourite films in the series, Moonraker, obviously, and we have a couple of stills from scenes that were cut from the film, and by all accounts, this footage does no longer exist, which is such a shame, but there was originally a Drax boardroom scene, which is the set that they have this really elaborate set in Moonraker, where it's this like boardroom table thing that kind of folds into the ground. It's what it would have taken to create that effect for such a nothing moment. Like it has no story purpose in the film as it is, and it's the first time that we're seeing this location, so it doesn't even work on kind of like a surprise level that suddenly the roof opens up and it's this big exhaust chamber. So I would love to know what Drax's boardroom meeting was really about, if this would have been like a Goldfinger kind of thing where he would have killed all of the investors of his dastardly scheme, or if Holly Goodhead would have been brought in or something like that. But I love Hugo Drax, one of my absolute favourite villains in the series, so seeing a little bit more of him would be lovely. And then in addition to that, we have some shots from some of the extra bits on the space station where Bond and Holly are kind of moseying around, and I would just love to have seen more Bond sci-fi stuff. Like, some of this stuff looks really cool, and the effects work looks pretty fantastic, and all that kind of stuff. I don't feel like we spend enough time on the space station at the end of the film, so getting any extra little snippets of that would be absolute gold dust. The next scene that I'm going to talk about was, by all accounts, only partially completed, and it sounds like one of the more exciting scenes. It would have been the first major action sequence that Bond would have in London in the series, and it's of course a sequence from On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which would have come just after the College of Arms scene with Hilary Bray. We have some stills from this sequence, and there's even a video on YouTube where someone has kind of put them together and sort of about how the scene would have played out, so I highly recommend checking out that. I'm going to put a link in the video description box below. Hilary Bray's assistant that we see in the film would have had a much bigger role, and he's kind of spying on Bond and and Bray, and he's listening in on their conversation, and then Bond would twig about this and they would go up, and then he kind of chases him along some rooftops and then kind of into the London tube network, where the guy is kicked in front of what I believe was supposed to be like a Royal Mail tube train. By all accounts, only the stuff that was kind of like on location, like the chase across the rooftops, was filmed, and it was partially filmed, and then I guess it would have been the stuff that would have been they would have had to move to like the soundstage probably to create, you know, special effects with the train coming along and killing the guy and all that kind of stuff. And I guess maybe they just felt like by that point they were like, you know what, we don't need to film the rest of the sequence, actually. It doesn't really matter. The film's very long as it is, and this is a big detour for such a minor character. At the same time, Bond having an action sequence in 60s London would have been absolutely phenomenal. I would love to see this footage. It would be, I don't think, like I said, I don't believe it exists, and it's of an age where the footage is obviously not going to be digitized and filed and kept and all that kind of stuff, but you never know, maybe some editor's assistant somewhere has this in a film can in their attic. I'm always kind of hoping, like, you know, when you see those articles of like some extra reel from long lost Laurel and Hardy film discovered in attic in LA and that kind of stuff, I'm always hoping that there's going to be something like that for James Bond, particularly for this scene, but sadly I believe that these stills and kind of a brief synopsis of what actually would have happened during the scene are all that we have to go on now. And finally, the last bit of deleted material that we don't have that I would really love to see would be the alternate ending for Quantum of Solace. There is so much out there that we know about this ending. Basically, Bond was gonna go and pretty much kill Mr. White and Guy Haines, and that it was kind of gonna end the film on a bit of an action sort of beat. And obviously this was changed. Director Mark Forster talks about why this change occurred, because the ending that we have in the film is essentially Bond finding his Quantum of Solace. It makes more thematic sense, and if the Mr. White ending had still been in there, it kind of sets up the expectation that the next film is going to be Bond carrying on this particular narrative, and obviously they didn't do that. Skyfall did a completely different thing. All that being said, it did mean that Quantum of Solace, like after Mr. White kind of pops in and out of things, it does leave that very much open, and the whole thing with Guy Haines as well has no kind of resolution, and this ending would have given that resolution. We've seen some like behind the scenes stills and snippets of footage of the filming of this thing, so we know it exists, and having it be such a recent film, I'm pretty sure the sequence will exist on some hard drive somewhere. I have no doubt about it, and it was the ending that the video games used as well. The video games end in this fashion, so it was certainly in there for a good long while, I guess. It must have been quite late on in the day when they figured that they were going to go with the ending that they did. Will it ever be released? I'm surprised that it hasn't been released, actually. Like, they did that kind of special edition Casino Royale where they released some deleted material from that. I'm surprised that they've not done that with Quantum of Solace, particularly because there must be like hundreds of hours of footage out there for that film that was cut out, and deleted scenes and extra bits here and there and all that kind of stuff. I would love actually to see an extended cut of Quantum of Solace, if you can believe that, with some deleted stuff actually put back in. It wouldn't surprise me if they're holding back on ever releasing that, because maybe it would be confusing to people. Obviously, Mr. White comes back in Spectre, and if we would see him, or at least have it be heavily implied that he would die at the end of Quantum of Solace, maybe the feeling is that that would confuse people. It might make its way into edits of the film somewhere, and then it would be... I don't know if that's just a messiness that Eon, MGM, whoever don't really want to deal with, all the same, I would be really fascinated to see it. So that's kind of my James Bond deleted scene wish list, and who knows, maybe one day we will actually have some of this stuff released. Like I say, a good deal of this stuff I don't think exists anymore, which sucks so bad, because I know that, like, if you're watching this channel, if you made it this far in this video, you're probably a massive Bond fanatic like I am, so, like, we would probably be happy with they could just release the thousands of hours of, recorded the rushes from, these films. And I would probably end up doing a top 10 times the director said action on set video, but we'd be going through everything. But this stuff, for me, is like holy grail kind of deleted Bond material. I would just absolutely love to see on some kind of future home media release, and who knows, maybe one day. Let me know your thoughts on some of this stuff in the comments section below, and is there anything that you feel like I've left off this list, or indeed that I don't even know about, that would be, even more deserving of holy grail deleted Bond footage status? Please do let me know in the comments section below. Also below, you can subscribe to this channel if you haven't already done so. Drop me a like on the video, that'd be very kind as well. And then there's also links to my social media pages, so my Facebook, Twitter, and my Patreon page, so please do check out those links if you're so inclined. And until next time, Bond fans, so long for now.